I was a fallen heir, a beta born into a family of wealth and privilege, pampered since childhood, and raised to believe the world would always bend for me. But when the company collapsed, when my parents died in that sudden accident, everything was stripped away overnight. I was barely 18, alone, and one step away from being sold into the underworld. That is when I met him, Ethan Cross, born in the slums, raised on blood and fists. A man who clawed his way up from the dirt, earning his first fortune in the underground fighting rings, before building an empire out of sheer ruthlessness. He saved me that night, bought me out of the filth with a handful of dirty cash, and since then, I've been trapped at his side. Years later, Ethan is no longer just a street thug. In Uptown, he is called a power broker, a kingpin in a tailored suit, a man everyone fears. But to me, he is still that rough, overbearing bastard who reeks of alcohol after every deal. The man who carries me off the ground in front of his guards, like I'm nothing but his toy. "Put me down," I snapped, fists pounding against his shoulder. "You're drunk, Ethan. Let me go." The servants slipped quietly out of the room, pretending not to hear. My face burned with humiliation, my eyes stinging with the shame of it all. For all my arrogance, for all my pride, I was still his kept beta, and every time he touched me in public, I felt stripped of what little dignity I had left. Ethan finally set me on the couch, his jaw tense. What now? His voice was rough, impatient, never the kind of soft I longed for. "You're mine. A kiss, a touch. Why make a scene?" The smell of whiskey clung to him. I shoved him away, my voice shaking. "You think I'll let you kiss me like this, with smoke and liquor on your breath? Don't flatter yourself." For a moment, the great Ethan Cross, slum-born conqueror of Uptown, looked unsettled. And when my eyes grew wet, when I turned away, he actually lowered his voice. "Don't cry. Tell me what you want. Haven't I always given in to you?" The question hung between us like a blade. What did I want? Freedom? Respect? Or something deeper that I couldn't even name? I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand, hating how vulnerable I felt. "I want you to stop treating me like property," I whispered. "I want you to stop dragging me around like some prize you won in a back alley fight." Ethan's expression darkened. "Property." He stepped closer, and I could feel the heat radiating from his body, the familiar scent of leather and cigarettes that clung to his skin. "Adrian, everything I've built, every deal I've made, every bone I've broken, it has all been for you, to keep you safe, to give you everything your precious family couldn't protect. I never asked for any of it." The words tore from my throat before I could stop them. "I never asked you to save me, to cage me, to make me your pet." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan's face went blank, that cold mask he wore in business meetings sliding into place. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet. "Pet," he laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think that is what you are to me?" I lifted my chin, trying to summon the arrogance that had once come so naturally. "Isn't it? You dress me up, keep me in this gilded cage, parade me around when it suits you. What else would you call it?" For a long moment, Ethan just stared at me. Then he turned and walked to the window, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. When he spoke again, his voice was so quiet, I had to strain to hear it. "I call it love, Adrian. Stupid, hopeless, one-sided love." The admission hit me like a physical blow. I had expected anger, possessiveness, even violence. But this raw honesty, it left me speechless. "I've given you everything," he continued, still not looking at me. "A home, security, freedom to insult me whenever you please. I've killed for you, Adrian." I've built an empire just to make sure you never have to fear being powerless again, and you think I see you as a pet." My throat felt tight. "Ethan." "No." He turned then, and the pain in his dark eyes was unmistakable. "You want to know what I see when I look at you. I see the boy who held his head high, even when his world was crumbling. I see someone so beautiful it hurts to look at him. Someone too good for a bastard like me. I see everything I want and can never truly have." "You have me," I said weakly. "I'm here." "Your body is here," he said. "Your sharp tongue, your pride, your anger, it is all here. But you, the real you, you've never been mine, not for a single day." The truth of it cut deeper than I wanted to admit. For 3 years, I had lived in his shadow, taken his protection, his gifts, his devotion, and given nothing in return but contempt and resistance. I had told myself it was pride, that I was maintaining my dignity in an impossible situation. But now, looking at the raw hurt in his eyes, I wondered if it had been something else entirely. Fear. I started, then stopped. What could I say? That he was right, that I had been so terrified of losing myself completely that I had never allowed myself to feel anything for him, that somewhere along the way, his rough hands and harsh voice had become the only constants in my shattered world. "You what?" His voice was tired now, drained of the anger that usually sustained our fights. "You're sorry. You didn't mean it. Save it, Adrian. I've heard it all before." He moved toward the door, and panic flared in my chest. "Where are you going?" "Out." He paused with his hand on the doorknob. "And before you ask, no, you can't come. Stay here, read a book, practice your insults. I'm sure you'll have new ones ready by the time I get back." "Ethan, wait." But he was already gone, leaving me alone in the opulent prison he had built for me. 3 days of silence, of Ethan leaving before I woke and returning after I had gone to bed. 3 days of meals eaten alone, of pacing the marble halls of his penthouse like a caged animal. The irony wasn't lost on me. When he finally appeared in the living room on the fourth evening, he looked exhausted. His usually perfect suit was wrinkled, his dark hair unkempt, but his eyes were cold and distant, like he was looking through me rather than at me. "Pack your things," he said without preamble. The words hit me like ice water. "What? You heard me?" He loosened his tie, not meeting my gaze. "Pack whatever you want to take. Marcus will drive you wherever you want to go." You're throwing me out." The question came out smaller than I intended. "I'm setting you free." His voice was matter of fact, businesslike. "Isn't that what you wanted? Your freedom? Your dignity?" I stared at him, unable to process what I was hearing. Just like that. Just like that. He moved to pour himself a drink, his movements careful and controlled. "There is money in an account under your name, enough to get you started wherever you want to go. Your trust fund from before. I've been trying to recover what I could. It is not much, but it is something. I don't understand." My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "Why now?" He took a long sip of whiskey before answering. "Because I'm tired, Adrian. Tired of fighting for scraps of affection from someone who clearly despises me. Tired of pretending that keeping you here against your will is somehow noble. I never said I despised you. You didn't have to." He finally looked at me then, and the emptiness in his expression was worse than any anger. "Your actions spoke loud enough." The accusation stung because it was true. I had spent 3 years pushing him away, rejecting every gesture of kindness, every attempt at genuine connection. I had convinced myself it was strength, but looking at him now, I realized it had been cruelty. "What if I don't want to go?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. Something flickered in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or pain. "Then you're free to stay. But not as my prisoner, not as my kept beta, or my pet, or whatever else you think you are. If you stay, it is because you choose to, because you want to be here. And if I leave, then you leave." His voice was steady, but I caught the slight tremor in his hand as he set down his glass. "No strings, no conditions. You walk out that door, and I'll never bother you again." The finality of it terrified me. For 3 years, Ethan had been the one constant in my chaotic world. Violent, possessive, infuriating, but constant. The thought of losing that, of losing him, left me feeling hollow. But I was Adrian Whitmore, proud, stubborn, too dignified to beg. So instead of saying what I really felt, I lifted my chin and gave him my coldest smile. "Fine, I'll be gone by morning." If he flinched, it was too quick for me to catch. He just nodded once, sharp and final. "Marcus will be waiting." I should have felt triumphant as I walked through the gleaming lobby of the luxury hotel downtown. After 3 years of captivity, I was finally free. Free to reclaim my place in society, to rebuild the Whitmore name, to show the world that I was more than just Ethan Cross's pretty beta. Instead, I felt empty. The hotel suite I had booked with Ethan's money was elegant and expensive, everything I had been accustomed to in my former life, but it felt cold, sterile, nothing like the warm chaos of Ethan's penthouse. I tried to convince myself it was better this way, cleaner, more dignified. The lies I told myself lasted exactly 12 hours. My first stop was the Meridian Club, the exclusive social club where my family had held membership for 3 generations. I had called ahead, assuming my name would still carry weight, that my status as a Whitmore would open doors. I was wrong. "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitmore," the receptionist said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Your family's membership was terminated following the unfortunate events with your father's company. I'm afraid I can't allow you access to the club facilities." The humiliation burned, but I kept my expression neutral. "I see. Perhaps I could speak with Mr. Blackstone. James and I were quite close before. Mr. Blackstone is in a meeting. Perhaps you could make an appointment for next month?" Next month. When before, James would have cleared his schedule to see me within the hour. The pattern repeated everywhere I went, former friends who suddenly had no time for me. Business contacts who claimed not to remember my name. Doors that had once opened at the mere mention of Whitmore now remained firmly shut. By the end of the week, my pride had been stripped away, layer by layer, leaving me raw and exposed. The money Ethan had given me was running low. Luxury hotels and fine dining were expensive habits I couldn't sustain without a family fortune backing me. But more than that, I was learning a harsh truth about the world I had been born into. Without money, without power, I was nothing to these people. Less than nothing. The final blow came at Charlotte Ashford's engagement party. Charlotte had been my closest friend before the fall, someone I had trusted with my secrets and my fears. When her invitation arrived at my hotel, I had felt a surge of hope. Maybe not everyone had abandoned me. Maybe there was still a place for me in this world. I should have known better. The party was held at the Ashford estate, a sprawling mansion that had been in Charlotte's family for generations. I arrived fashionably late, wearing one of the expensive suits Ethan had bought me, the only clothes I owned that were suitable for such an event. For a moment, I felt like the old Adrian, confident and untouchable. The feeling lasted until I stepped into the ballroom. The conversations didn't stop exactly, but they shifted, becoming louder and more pointed. I caught fragments as I moved through the crowd. Cross's pet fallen so far. Heard he has been keeping him for years. My cheeks burned, but I held my head high. I could survive gossip. I had survived worse. It was when I finally found Charlotte that everything fell apart. "Adrian," she greeted me with a bright smile and air kisses that barely touched my cheeks. "How lovely to see you. I wasn't sure you'd come." Of course I came, I said, trying to match her tone. I wouldn't miss your engagement party. How sweet. Her smile grew sharper. And how is your situation? Still living with that criminal? The word hit like a slap. Criminal. As if Ethan was nothing more than a common thug. As if everything he had built meant nothing. Ethan isn't a criminal, I said carefully. He is a businessman. Of course he is. Charlotte's laugh was light and cruel. A businessman who started in the fighting rings and worked his way up through God knows what kind of violence. Really, Adrian, I know you fell on hard times, but prostituting yourself to that kind of man. I'm not, I started, but she cut me off. Oh, don't be embarrassed. We all understand. When you have nothing left, you do what you must to survive. It is actually quite admirable, in a way, very practical. The words were delivered with such casual cruelty that for a moment I couldn't breathe. Around us, other conversations had quieted, people straining to listen to our exchange. I realized with growing horror that this was entertainment for them, the fallen Whitmore heir being humiliated by his former friend. I should go, I said quietly. Oh, but you just arrived. Charlotte's eyes glittered with malice. Surely you can stay for a little while. I'm sure everyone would love to hear about your new life. How did you meet Mr. Cross? Was it love at first sight, or was it more of a business arrangement? The laughter that rippled through the nearby crowd was like knives against my skin. I felt trapped, surrounded by people who had once called themselves my friends and were now treating me like a circus act. Please, I whispered, hating how weak I sounded. Charlotte, please don't do this. Do what? Her voice rose, carrying clearly across the room. I'm just asking about your life. Surely there is nothing shameful about being kept by Ethan Cross. After all, he is quite wealthy now, isn't he? And I imagine he takes very good care of his investments. The world tilted around me. Investments. Is that what they thought I was? What I had become? Excuse me. The voice cut through the humiliating conversation like a blade, deep and familiar, and absolutely furious. I turned, and there he was, Ethan Cross, in a black suit that made him look like death incarnate, his dark eyes blazing with a rage I had never seen before. The crowd around us took an instinctive step back. I'm sorry, Charlotte said, her voice suddenly uncertain. I don't believe we've been introduced. No, Ethan said quietly. You haven't, but I know exactly who you are, Miss Ashford, and what you are. His gaze moved to me, and for a moment the anger softened into something else. Something that looked almost like relief. Adrian, he said gently, you're leaving now. I wanted to protest, to claim I could handle this myself, but the truth was I couldn't. I was drowning in my own humiliation, and Ethan was throwing me a lifeline. I nodded. Ethan moved to my side, his presence immediately creating a buffer between me and the hostile crowd. When he spoke again, his voice carried the kind of quiet menace that had built his empire. If any of you, he said, his gaze moving slowly across the faces around us, ever speak to him like that again, I will make it my personal mission to destroy everything you hold dear, your businesses, your families, your precious reputations, all of it. Are we clear? The silence that followed was absolute. Charlotte had gone pale, her earlier confidence evaporating in the face of Ethan's cold fury. Good, he said. Then, to me, come on, we're leaving. I followed him out of the ballroom, through the mansion's ornate halls, past the shocked faces of people who had once bowed to my family's name. It wasn't until we were in his car, the estate disappearing behind us, that I finally broke. The tears came all at once, harsh and ugly and impossible to stop. 3 years of pride, of stubborn resistance, of convinced myself I was better than this, and it had all crumbled in a single evening. I'm sorry, I sobbed, pressing my hands to my face. God, I'm so sorry. You were right about all of it. I'm nothing without you, nothing. Ethan pulled the car over and turned to face me. His expression was gentle now, all the earlier rage replaced by something that looked like heartbreak. Don't, he said quietly. Don't say that. You're not nothing, Adrian. You're everything. Then why? I looked up at him through my tears. Why did you let me go? Why didn't you fight for me? His hand reached out, hesitating for a moment, before gently cupping my face. Because I wanted you to choose me. Not because you had to, not because you had nowhere else to go, but because you wanted to, because you wanted to, because you could love me back. The words broke something inside me. All this time, I had thought he wanted to possess me, to own me like everything else in his empire. I had never considered that what he wanted was something far more precious and far more fragile. I was scared, I whispered, so scared that if I let myself feel anything for you, I would disappear completely, that I would become just another thing you owned. And now, I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who had saved me when I had nothing, who had given me everything and asked for nothing in return, except the one thing I had been too frightened to give. Who had let me go when I asked for freedom, even though it was clearly killing him. Now I know I was an idiot, I said. Now I know that I've been in love with you for years and was too proud and too scared to admit it. The hope that flickered in his eyes was almost painful to see. Adrian, take me home, I said. Please, take me home. He studied my face for a long moment, searching for any sign of doubt or deception. When he found none, he nodded once and started the car. Home, not to the penthouse where I had been his prisoner, but to the place where I belonged, where I chose to belong. The weeks that followed were unlike anything I had experienced before. For the first time since Ethan had taken me in, I was there by choice rather than circumstance. The difference was subtle but profound. Every gesture of affection, every moment of intimacy, carried the weight of mutual desire rather than obligation. We talked, really talked, for hours at a time, about his childhood in the slums, about the violence he had endured and committed to build his empire, about my own fears and insecurities, about the crushing weight of expectations I had carried as the Whitmore heir, about the 3 years we had spent circling each other like wary animals, too proud and too hurt to reach across the divide. I used to hate you, I admitted one evening, as we lay tangled together in his bed, for saving me, for making me dependent on you, for being everything I thought I despised. And now, his fingers traced patterns on my bare chest, his touch gentle and reverent. Now I realize I was hating you for all the wrong reasons. I turned to face him, studying the strong lines of his face in the dim light. I should have hated you for making me fall in love with you when I was convinced I never would. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Would you take it back if you could? Never, I said, and meant it, even with all the pain, all the fear. I wouldn't change a single day, because they all led me here, to this moment, to choosing you. But our happiness existed in a bubble, and bubbles have a way of bursting. The trouble started with a series of coordinated attacks on Ethan's businesses. Warehouses burned, shipments disappeared. Key lieutenants turned up dead. Someone was making a move against him, and they were doing it with the kind of precision that suggested inside information. It is systematic, Marcus reported during one of the tense strategy meetings that had become a daily occurrence. They know our operations, our routes, our security protocols. This isn't some rival gang making a play. This is someone who knows us intimately. Ethan's jaw tightened. Any idea who? We're working on it, but boss. Marcus's gaze flickered to me. There is something else. Word on the street is that you've gone soft, that having a beta around has made you weak. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Is that so? I'm just telling you what people are saying, that Adrian Whitmore has turned the infamous Ethan Cross into a lovesick fool who can't focus on business. I felt the familiar burn of shame, the old fear that I was more liability than asset. But before I could speak, Ethan's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Let them think that," he said quietly. "Let them all think that. When they come for us, and they will, they'll be expecting a weakened man distracted by love. Instead, they'll find someone who has everything to fight for." The attack came 3 days later. I was alone in the penthouse, Ethan having gone to meet with potential allies across town. I had argued about being left behind, but he had been adamant this was too dangerous, too unpredictable. The first sign something was wrong was when the power went out. The second was the sound of the elevator doors opening on our private floor. I wasn't completely helpless. 3 years with Ethan had taught me basic self-defense, and I knew where he kept his weapons. But 6 armed men against 1 beta was hardly a fair fight. They didn't kill me immediately, which told me they had other plans. Plans that likely involved using me as leverage against Ethan. "Mr. Whitmore," the leader said with mock politeness as his men tied my hands behind my back. "So sorry to disturb your evening. I'm afraid we need to borrow you for a little while." "Ethan will kill you all," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Maybe, but that is a problem for later. Right now, you're coming with us." They dragged me to the service elevator, down to the parking garage where a black van waited. As they shoved me inside, I caught a glimpse of the building's security guard, dead, his throat cut from ear to ear. These weren't common criminals. They were professionals. The warehouse they took me to was on the opposite side of the city, in a district I didn't recognize. They tied me to a chair in what looked like an abandoned office, the windows painted black to block any view from outside. "Now we wait," the leader said, settling into a chair across from me. "Your boyfriend should be getting our message about now." My phone had been buzzing frantically in my pocket before they took it away. Ethan would be frantic, would be calling in every favor and making every threat to find me. The thought should have been comforting, but all I could think about was how this would end. Men like these didn't take hostages for ransom money. They took them to send messages, and messages written in blood tended to be permanent. "He'll come," I said, more to convince myself than them. "Oh, I'm counting on it." The man smiled, and it was all teeth and malice. Ethan Cross, the great crime king, brought low by his pretty little beta. "Do you know how long we've been planning this? How many people want to see him fall? Then why not just kill him? Why involve me? Because killing him would make him a martyr, but destroying him, breaking him completely, that sends a much stronger message. And the best way to break a man like Ethan Cross is to take away the one thing he loves more than power." The words sent ice through my veins. I had walked into their hands willingly, my own pride and need for independence making me the perfect weapon against the man I loved. Hours passed. The leader's phone rang occasionally. Conversations conducted in low voices I couldn't quite make out, but I caught enough to know that Ethan was indeed coming, that he was mobilizing his entire organization to find me. "He is close," one of the men reported. "Our scouts have him 3 blocks out." "Good," the leader stood, checking his weapon. "Remember," wound him, "don't kill him. I want him alive to watch." They positioned themselves around the warehouse, leaving 2 men to guard me. I tested my bonds for the 100th time, but the zip ties held firm. All I could do was wait and pray that Ethan had a plan beyond charging him like an avenging angel. The sound of gunfire erupted from the front of the warehouse. Shouts, breaking glass, the distinctive crack of automatic weapons. The 2 men guarding me raised their guns toward the door. their attention focused on the approaching battle. It was the only chance I was going to get. I threw myself sideways, chair and all, putting as much distance between myself and my guards as possible. One of them turned toward me, but before he could react, the office door exploded inward. Ethan came through, like a force of nature, moving with deadly precision and purpose. The first guard went down with a bullet between his eyes. The second managed to get off a wild shot before Ethan's knife found his throat. And then it was over, at least in our little corner of hell. Adrian. He was beside me in an instant, cutting through my bonds with hands that were surprisingly gentle, despite the violence he had just committed. "Are you hurt? Did they?" "I'm fine," I said quickly. "Scared, but fine. They were waiting for you." His jaw tightened. "I know. It was a trap from the beginning. Then why did you come?" He looked at me like the question was absurd. "Because you're here. Because I would walk into hell itself to get you back." The sound of approaching footsteps made us both freeze. More of Ethan's men, I hoped, but we couldn't be certain. "Stay behind me," Ethan ordered, positioning himself between me and the door. But it was Marcus who appeared, his own gun drawn but lowered when he saw us. "Boss, we've secured the building. Most of them are dead, but their leader got away." "How many of ours?" "3 wounded, none dead. We got lucky." Ethan nodded grimly. "This isn't over. Whoever organized this, they'll try again." "Actually," I said quietly, "I don't think they will." Both men turned to me with identical expressions of confusion. "They weren't trying to kill you," I explained. "They wanted to break you, to show the world that Ethan Cross could be brought to his knees by threatening the people he cares about. But you came for me anyway. You risked everything to get me back. That doesn't look like weakness. It looks like strength." Understanding dawned in Ethan's eyes. "They wanted to make me choose between power and love, and you chose love, in front of witnesses, in a way that the entire underworld will hear about. That doesn't make you look weak, Ethan. It makes you look terrifying. Because a man who will go to war for the people he loves is the most dangerous kind of enemy." Marcus was nodding slowly. "He is right. Half the city's criminal element was watching tonight, waiting to see how you'd respond. And what they saw was someone willing to burn down the world for his beta. That is not weakness. That is fucking terrifying." Ethan smiled, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, it reached his eyes. "Smart and beautiful. How did I get so lucky?" "You didn't," I said, standing on shaky legs and moving into his arms. "You earned it. Every day for 3 years you earned it." As he held me, breathing in the scent of my hair like he was reassuring himself, I was real and whole. I realized something had fundamentally changed between us. The last walls had come down, the final fears conquered. We had chosen each other in the most absolute way possible. Not just in words or gestures, but in blood and violence and the willingness to risk everything. We were no longer captor and captive, keeper and kept. We were partners in every sense of the word. 6 months later, I stood in what had once been an abandoned school in the heart of the slums where Ethan grew up. Now, it gleamed with fresh paint and new equipment, filled with the laughter and energy of children who finally had a safe place to learn and grow. The reading program is exceeding all our projections. I reported to the board of directors, a mix of reformed criminals, legitimate businessmen, and social workers who somehow made the unlikely combination work. And the meal program is feeding twice as many kids as we originally planned for. It had been my idea initially, the school, a way to give back to the community that had shaped the man I loved, to build something lasting and positive out of the empire Ethan had carved from violence and desperation. To my surprise, he had embraced the project wholeheartedly, throwing both money and manpower behind it with the same intensity he brought to everything else. "Any problems with the city?" asked Maria Santos, the former gang leader. who now served as our community liaison. "Nothing we can't handle," Ethan said from his position by the window. He had been quiet through most of the meeting, watching the children play in the newly constructed courtyard below. "The mayor's office is being cooperative. Turns out most politicians are happy to support projects that make them look good." "And the families?" This from Dr. Elizabeth Cray, the educator we had hired to run the actual school programs. "Cautious but grateful," I replied. "It is going to take time to build trust. A lot of these people have been let down by promises before." "We keep our promises," Ethan said quietly. "All of them." After the meeting dispersed, we walked through the school together, checking on the various programs and improvements. In the main classroom, a group of 8-year-olds was struggling through a reading lesson. Ethan stopped to watch, his expression unreadable. "You know," I said softly, "when I first met you, I never would have imagined this." "What, me funding a school? You caring about anything beyond power and money?" I paused, studying his profile. "You caring about me?" He turned to face me, one eyebrow raised. "Having doubts? Never." I moved closer, not caring who might see, just marveling at how wrong first impressions can be. "Well, my first impression of you was that you were a spoiled brat who needed someone to teach him how the real world worked." And his smile was soft and private, meant only for me. "I was half right. You were spoiled. But you taught me just as much as I taught you." "Such as?" "That power without purpose is just destruction. That having something worth protecting makes you stronger, not weaker." He reached out to touch my face, his thumb tracing the line of my cheekbone. "That love doesn't make you vulnerable. It makes you invincible." One of the children called out to us then, asking for help with a particularly difficult word. We spent the next hour reading with them, Ethan's deep voice stumbling slightly over some of the simpler passages, while I helped the younger ones sound out syllables. Watching him with those kids, patient and gentle, in a way that would have shocked his enemies, I felt something settle deep in my chest. This was who we were now. Not the crime king and his kept beta, not the fallen heir and his savior, but partners building something meaningful together. That evening, as we walked home through the city streets, I noticed how different the world looked through my new eyes. The luxury shops and exclusive restaurants that had once been my natural habitat seemed hollow now, their glittering facades hiding the same emptiness I had felt for so long. But the smaller places, the family-owned cafes, the corner stores where immigrants sold goods from their homelands, the community centers where people came together to solve problems, these felt real and vital and alive. "Do you ever miss it?" Ethan asked, seeming to read my thoughts. "Your old life? The money? The status?" I considered the question seriously. Sometimes it is hard to completely shake the desire for things that were once your birthright, but missing something and wanting it back are different things. And you don't want it back. I want what we have now, what we're building together. I stopped walking and turned to face him. "The school, this life, you. It feels real in a way nothing ever did before. Like I'm finally becoming the person I was meant to be instead of the person I was expected to be." Adrian Whitmore, reformed crime prince's beta, an advocate for underprivileged children, he said with a smile. "Your ancestors are probably spinning in their graves." "Good. Let them spin." I kissed him then, right there on the busy sidewalk, not caring who saw or what they thought. "I'd rather be your partner than their heir any day." When we reached the penthouse, we found Marcus waiting in the lobby with a tablet and the grim expression that usually meant bad news. "Sorry to bother you," he said, "but we've got a situation. Someone's been asking questions about the school, digging into the funding sources, looking for connections to our other operations." Ethan's expression darkened. "Who?" "James Blackstone." The name hit me like a physical blow. James, Charlotte's fiancé, My former friend, one of the people who had cut me dead when my family fell from grace. What does he want? I asked, though I suspected I already knew. Hard to say, but he has been talking to reporters, suggesting that the school is some kind of money laundering operation, trying to get the city to investigate our permits and funding. Son of a bitch, Ethan muttered. He is trying to shut us down. Not just that, I said grimly. He is trying to destroy the one good thing we've built, to prove that everything we touch turns to corruption. Can he do it? Marcus asked. Legally, I mean, with enough pressure and the right connections, maybe. I thought through the implications, my mind racing. James has influence, money, political connections. If he makes enough noise, if he gets the media involved, then we stop him, Ethan said simply. How? We can't just make him disappear, Ethan. This isn't some rival gang leader or corrupt businessman. James is a legitimate member of high society. If something happens to him, every investigation agency in the city will be crawling all over us. Then we don't make him disappear. We make him irrelevant. I stared at him. What do you mean? I mean, we beat him at his own game. Politics, public relations, social pressure, all the weapons your people use against each other. We turn his attack back on him. My people? Ethan, I'm not one of them anymore. I don't have access to their networks, their influence. No, but you know how they think, how they operate, and more importantly, you know their weaknesses. His eyes were fierce, calculating. You know what they fear most. Understanding began to dawn. Scandal, public humiliation, having their dirty secrets exposed. Exactly, Marcus. I want everything you can find on James Blackstone, financial records, personal relationships, business dealings, everything. If he has secrets, I want to know them. And if he doesn't? Marcus asked. Everyone has secrets, I said quietly, especially in my former social circle. The trick is knowing where to look. It took 3 days to gather the information we needed. But when Marcus presented his findings, I knew we had enough to destroy James Blackstone's reputation 10 times over. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, Marcus reported, spreading documents across Ethan's desk. Money that should have gone to his family's charitable foundation. We're talking about millions of dollars diverted from programs meant to help homeless veterans. And that is not the worst of it, I added, studying the financial records. Look at these dates. He has been skimming from the charity for over 5 years. But the amounts increased dramatically right around the time he got engaged to Charlotte. He needed the money for the wedding, Ethan concluded. Probably promised the Ashfords a certain lifestyle he couldn't actually afford. There is more, Marcus continued. 3 different women, all former employees of companies his family owns. All of them received sudden, substantial severance packages after filing initial complaints for sexual harassment payoffs, I said grimly, to keep them quiet. And all of this while he has been playing the role of upstanding citizen and moral authority, Ethan said. The kind of man who thinks he has the right to question our motives. So, what is the play? Marcus asked. I looked at Ethan, then back at the evidence spread before us. A year ago, I would have been horrified by what we were contemplating. Now, I felt only cold determination. We give it to the press, I said. All of it. Financial crimes, sexual harassment, the works. But we do it smart. We don't just dump everything at once. We create a story, a narrative that builds momentum. What kind of narrative? The crusading socialite who attacks a legitimate charity school to cover up his own crimes, Ethan said, understanding immediately. The hypocrite who steals from veterans while trying to shut down programs for disadvantaged children. Exactly. We make him the villain, not us. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts. I still have friends in the media, people who remember when the Whitmore name meant something. They'll be interested in this story. Are you sure about this? Ethan asked quietly. Once we do this, there is no going back. You'll be choosing our world over theirs completely. I thought about James, about Charlotte, about all the people who had turned their backs on me when I needed them most. Then I thought about the children at our school, the families who depended on the programs we had created, the future we were building together. I chose our world the night you saved me from that party, I said. This is just making it official. The story broke on a Thursday morning, splashed across the front page of the city's largest newspaper under the headline, Charity Fraud. Socialite stole millions from veterans. By noon, every major news outlet was running follow-up pieces. By evening, James Blackstone was in police custody. The sexual harassment allegations came out the following day, followed by a parade of former employees willing to tell their stories now that someone had broken the silence. Charlotte's engagement was called off before the weekend, the Ashford family issuing a terse statement about being deceived by someone they trusted. Think he'll still try to shut down the school? Marcus asked as we watched the coverage from Ethan's office. What school? I replied. He is going to be too busy trying to stay out of prison. But the real victory came a week later, when the City Council voted unanimously to increase funding for our education programs and fast-track permits for 2 additional schools in other underserved neighborhoods. The contrast between our legitimate charitable work and James's theft had been too stark for anyone to ignore. Congratulations, the mayor said as she handed Ethan the ceremonial key to the city, a largely symbolic gesture, but one that carried real political weight. Your organization has done something remarkable here. You've shown that people can change, that communities can heal, that the past doesn't have to define the future. I watched from the crowd as Ethan accepted the honor, his scarred hands incongruous against the polished brass key. He looked comfortable on the stage, confident in a way that had nothing to do with intimidation or fear. This was power of a different kind, the power that came from building something meaningful, something that would outlast any individual. After the ceremony, as we walked to the car surrounded by reporters and well-wishers, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Pride, not the hollow, inherited pride of the Whitmore name, but the deep satisfaction that came from earning something through hard work and sacrifice. No regrets? Ethan asked as we drove home through the city. We were slowly helping to change. Only one, I said, which is that it took me so long to realize what I really wanted. I reached for his hand, intertwining our fingers. That I wasted so much time being angry at you for giving me exactly what I needed. And what did you need? Someone who would love me enough to let me go, and someone strong enough to catch me when I fell. He brought our joined hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to my knuckles. I'll always catch you, Adrian, no matter how far you fall or how hard you fight me. That is what love means. I know, I said. That is why I stopped fighting. 1 year later, I stood in the garden of our new home, not the penthouse with its gleaming surfaces and sterile luxury, but a renovated brownstone in the neighborhood where our first school operated. The house was warm and lived in, filled with books and art, and the comfortable clutter of a life shared between 2 people who had finally learned to trust each other completely. Ethan found me there as the sun was setting, 2 glasses of wine in his hands, and a smile on his face that was purely content. Good day, he asked, settling beside me on the garden bench we had installed under the old oak tree. The best, I replied, accepting the wine and leaning into his warmth. The literacy program is ahead of schedule. We broke ground on the 3rd school this morning, and Maria thinks we can start the job training initiative by fall. And personally, I turned to look at him, this man who had saved me in every way that mattered. His dark hair was starting to show silver at the temples, and the lines around his eyes spoke of laughter as much as stress. He was still dangerous, would always be dangerous, but now that danger was tempered by purpose and softened by love. Personally, I said, I wake up every morning grateful that 18-year-old Adrian was too stupid to recognize a good thing when he saw it. Oh, you recognized it, Ethan said with a grin. You just had to make it difficult. Someone had to keep you humble. And someone had to teach you that being vulnerable isn't the same as being weak. I set down my wine and moved closer until I was pressed against his side and could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Do you think they're proud of us, the people we used to be? I think they'd be amazed, he said thoughtfully. Young Adrian, the boy who lost everything and thought the world was ending. I think he'd be shocked to discover that losing everything was actually the beginning of finding everything that mattered. And young Ethan, the boy who fought his way out of the slums with nothing but his fists and his anger, I think he'd be proud that all that fighting led somewhere worth going, that all that anger could be transformed into something productive. We sat in comfortable silence as the last light faded from the sky, content in each other's presence and in the life we had built together. It wasn't the life either of us had planned or expected, but it was ours. Ethan? I said, as we finally prepared to go inside. Yes, thank you. For saving me, for keeping me, for letting me go, for catching me when I fell. I paused, searching for words adequate to express what I felt. For loving me even when I couldn't love myself. He stopped walking and turned to face me, his hands gentle on my face. Adrian Whitmore, he said solemnly, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. The best decision I ever made, the best risk I ever took. Even when I was being impossible, especially then. Anyone can love someone when they're easy to love. It takes something special to love someone through their worst moments and help them become their best self. We helped each other, I corrected. We saved each other. Yes, he agreed, sealing the words with a kiss that tasted of wine and promises and forever. We did. As we walked into our home, our real home, built on choice rather than circumstance, I thought about the boy I had been and the man I had become, about cages both gilded and self-imposed, about freedom, both stolen and chosen, about love that grew stronger through adversity rather than weaker. The Adrian Whitmore who had walked out of Ethan's penthouse a year ago had been desperate to reclaim a life that no longer existed. The Adrian Whitmore who walked into this house was building a life that had never existed before, something entirely new and entirely his own. Behind us, the lights of the city twinkled like stars, illuminating a world full of possibility and hope. Ahead of us, the rest of our lives stretched out like an unwritten story, ready to be filled with love and laughter and the quiet satisfaction of work that mattered. I had been born into privilege and lost it all. I had been caged by circumstance and freed by choice. I had been saved by love and learned to save in return. And in the end, I had discovered that the most beautiful prisons are the ones we build for ourselves out of trust and devotion and the absolute certainty that some things are worth fighting for. Some things are worth staying for. Some things are worth choosing again and again until choice becomes nature and love becomes home.